Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada,
Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishna Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratvishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna. Okay, can we revise a few points from yesterday?
The first means the way 4 ways of happy family life is like chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra with the family, accept sadham offered to Krishna, then do the deity worship with the family, and reading Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, fine, good. So essentially, what was the topics that we discussed yesterday?
The process of knowledge and the object of knowledge.
Yes, the process of knowledge and the object of knowledge. Jnanam and Gneyam. Right. Okay, so under Jnanam, what did we discuss?
The qualities that endear one to Krishna. And in that, starting with the quality, Bhakti, Ananya Bhakti Yogena, which is the most important. If one has this quality, other qualities will develop.
Okay, fine. So how many qualities Krishna is talking about?
20 qualities.
20 sadhanas.
Yes, 20 sadhanas. What are these sadhanas meant for?
It's meant to gain knowledge of soul or super soul.
Yes,
and these are meant to get out of the kshetra.
Yes, that's right. Yes, so these are sadhanas in order to get out of the kshetra. Okay, fine. So and then we had a brief discussion about all of them. The first quality is what?
Humility.
Yes, amanitvam, humility. As Prabhupada explains, the first step of the ladder. Then only we can proceed ahead. Okay, and then we discussed about Neyam, the object of knowledge. So what is the object of knowledge?
Krishna himself.
We did this.
Jiva and Paramatma.
Yes, the soul and the super soul. Yes, that's the Neyam. Right, and we discussed about the soul, and then we discussed about the super soul, how the super soul is present everywhere. He has his hands, legs, eyes everywhere, and he is also giving the illumination to all the illuminating objects like the sun and the moon. So we discussed all those points about the super soul. Okay, fine. So now we're proceeding ahead with the next section. which is from 20 to 26. Okay, so the next section is 20 to 26, Prakriti, Purusha and their union. Okay, so we're starting with the 20th verse. So this is as we saw that Arjuna had asked these 6 questions about Kshetra, Kshetrajna. Of course, first he asked Prakriti, Purusha, then Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Gneyam. And as we said before, Krishna discussed topics which are a little more simpler first, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam and Gneyam. And he left Prakriti, Purusha for a little later because this is a little more complex to understand, but at the same time, very, very important to understand this topic. So let's proceed. 20th verse. Prakritam purusham keva vidyanadi bhavapi vikarams gunams chaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavam. Material nature and is beginningless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are material nature. So here, so Krishna is beginning with Prakritim Purusham. So that's what he's going to speak about now, the Prakriti and the Purusha. So now here, the Purusha that is being referred to here is the Jiva. Okay? Purusham here means the Jiva, the living entities. So Krishna is saying, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva with the Anadhi, Ubhavapi. Both of them are Anadi, without beginning. So as we did discuss the point before, that of course we know the living entities, they are Anadi, they don't have any beginning. As Krishna also explained in the 2nd chapter of the Gita, Ajo api sannavyatma buddha. No, that is about Krishna. But in the 2nd chapter, Krishna has also spoken about the Jiva and how the Jiva is also Aja, the Jiva is also Anadi, Nityam. So, so the Jiva has no beginning, eternal. But the material nature, the Prakriti is also Anadi, because Prakriti is energy of the Lord. And so being energy of the Lord, the Prakriti is also eternal. Though the transformations of the Prakriti are temporary and always changing, but Prakriti by itself is eternal, beginningless. So that's what Prabhupada writes in the purport. The body is the field of activity and is composed of material nature. The individual soul that is embodied and enjoying the activities of the body is the Purusha or the living entity. He is one knower and the other is a super soul. Of course, it is to be understood that both the super soul and the individual entity are different manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity is in the category of his energy and the super soul is in the category of his personal expansion. So we know this fact that the Supreme Lord, he has his various expansions, various energies. So there is Vishnu Tattva, there is Jiva Tattva, there is Shakti Tattva. So we know the living entities basically belong to the Tatastha Shakti. And as far as the super soul, he is in the category of Swamsha. So then he writes, both material nature and the living entity are eternal. That is to say that they existed before the creation. The material manifestation is from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so also are the living entities, but the living entities are of the superior energy. Both the living entities and the material nature existed before this cosmos was manifested. Material nature was absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead Mahavishnu, and when it was required, it is manifested by the agency of the Mother. Similarly, the living entities are also in him, and because they're conditioned, they're averse to serving the Supreme Lord. Thus, they are not allowed to enter into the spiritual sky. Okay, so during the time of annihilation, the living entities, they remain within Mahavishnu, and then once again they're sent back into the material nature to fulfill their desires. But with the coming forth of material nature, these living entities are again given a chance to act in the material world and prepare themselves to enter into the spiritual world. Okay, so that is the purpose of material creation, that ultimately they prepare themselves to go back to the spirit, give up the rebellious mentality and prepare themselves to go to the spiritual world. That is the mystery of this material creation. Actually, the living entities originally the spiritual part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but due to his rebellious nature, he is conditioned within material nature. Now, an important point Prabhupada is writing here. It really does not matter how these living entities or superior entities of the Supreme Lord have come in contact with material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead knows, however, how and why this actually took place. In the scriptures, the Lord says that those attracted by this material nature are undergoing a hard struggle for existence. But we should know it with certainty from the descriptions of these few verses that all transformations and influences of material nature by the three modes are also productions of material nature. All transformations and variety in respect to living entities are due to the body. As far as spirit is concerned, living entities are all the same. So, since time immemorial, the living entity has been in the material world. Therefore, the living entity is called as Nitya Baddha, eternally conditioned. Why eternal? Because there is no date in time when the living entity became conditioned. So therefore, it is called eternally conditioned. So since time immemorial, the jiva has been in the material world. Now, very often, devotees also ask this question. And of course, sometimes it becomes a debatable, controversial question also. And so many devotees, in fact, have spoken and written so much on the subject matter. And that is why the jiva, first of all, came into this material worlds. Because in the spiritual worlds, everyone is in love with the Supreme Lord, serving the Supreme Lord. Then how did the jiva become envious of the Supreme Lord, as a result of which he has come into this material worlds? So very often that question is asked. And sometimes so much discussion is there on the subject matter. But Prabhupada here, in 2-3 sentences, he is dismissing that question by saying it really does not matter how, why, when that took place. Of course, one person knows it for sure, that is the Supreme Lord. And as far as we are concerned, we have no capacity to understand that. Only thing we can understand is that yes, somehow at a certain point of time, the living entity became envious of the Supreme Lord. The moment he became envious, he has been sent into this material world. That much we know. But beyond that, to try and understand is not within our capacity and is not required either. So Srila Prabhupada gives a very simple example to understand this. He says that just like somebody has been bitten by a mosquito, he has got malaria. Or if you want to put it in modern day context, you can talk about the coronavirus. Somebody has got infected and he has got the symptoms. Now, if he is told to take the medicine, so if the patient says, no, first tell me which mosquito bit me or which virus entered amongst the millions of viruses. So how is that going to help? Well, somehow the mosquito has bit, the the malaria microbe has entered, and the person has got malaria. Now, what is required to be done is he should take the medicine and get cured. That is it. So, what is the point in trying to find out which mosquito? Is there any point? No. So, similarly, Prabhupada gives another example also. Just like somehow a person has been pushed from a ship and is drowning in the ocean. Somehow he has fallen from the ship. And so now somebody throws him a rope. Now, if the person says, no, first tell me who pushed me down, then I'll catch hold of the rope. That is no meaning. By the time he'll drown. More intelligent is catch the rope, go up on the ship and find out who pushed. So, similarly, somehow the jiva has fallen into this material world. So now what is more important is to get out. And anyway, Krishna knows everything. So after going back to the spiritual world, one can ask Krishna how everything happened. But at this point of time, that is a useless discussion. So therefore, Prabhupada makes a very clear point over here. So somehow the jiva has come into this material world due to the rebellious nature, as Prabhupada writes. And then once he comes into this material world, the immediate thing that happens is Maya captures him. So as Prabhupada very often quoted this verse from the Prema Vivarta, Krishna Bahirmukh hoy, Bhoga Vancha kare, Nikatastha Maya tare Jhapatiya dhare. So the moment the jiva becomes Krishna Bahirmukh, turns his face away from Krishna, rebels against Krishna. Why? Bhoga Vancha, because of his desire to enjoy independent of the Lord. As Prabhupada puts it in his lectures, he says, the jiva thinks, oh, why only Krishna should enjoy? Why not me? So the moment that thought comes, then Maya is very close. As we read in the first canto, 7th chapter of the Bhagavatam, how Vyasadeva had the vision of the Supreme Lord and Maya Devi, who's just behind the Supreme Lord. So she's very close. So the moment the jiva forgets the Supreme Lord, then Maya is waiting there. Nikatastha, nikat means very close. And immediately the jiva is captured by the Supreme Lord, by Maya. Nikatastha Maya tare Jhapatiya. So immediately Maya pounces on the jiva and captures him like a hunter capturing an animal and tying him with ropes. So similarly, Maya ties the jiva with ropes. What are these ropes? The three modes. The jiva is immediately tied by these three modes. And then whatever he does is influenced by the modes. Okay. So now we'll proceed ahead to the next verse. Karya karana kartritve hetu prakritiruchyate purusha sukha dukkhanam bhoktritve heturuchyate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Okay, somebody can please read this purport.
Yes. Devotees can raise hand. Anand, please.
Yes, verse 21 purport.
The different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 84 lakh different species of life, and these varieties are creations of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity, who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body and not to himself as he is. In its original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasures for the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total body and instrument senses are offered by material nature, and as will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is supposed to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the super soul is with the individual soul. That is explained in Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1 as follows. Dvasuparana Sayuja Sakhaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul and in all circumstances is present as the super soul or Paramatma.
Okay, thank you. So here Krishna is saying Karya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakriti Ruchate. So Prakriti is the instrument, Hetu. Hetu means cause or instrument of what? Of all causes and effects in this world. Karya and Karana. So whatever is happening in the material world, Prakriti is responsible for everything that's happening. So when we talk about Karya and Karana, cause and effect, that means this is basically referring to the material bodies. So who gives the material body? Who's the cause of the material body? Prakriti. And when a particular body is given, then there are certain effects of the body, as Prabhupada is explaining. So the dog will have to bark like a dog. So the dog can bark, he can jump around and and uh, and mate on the streets. But there is no question of the dog understanding philosophy. As Prabhupada in many of his classes says, you can't expect dogs and cats to sit in a Bhagavad Gita class. Why? That is the effect of the body that he has received. Who's the cause of the effect? Prakriti. So Prakriti is the instrument of the cause, that is the body, and the effects of the body, that also Prakriti is only giving. But Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam Bhoktritve Heturuchate. But as far as the Bhoktritve is concerned, so the Prakriti is Kartritve and the Purusha or the Jiva is Bhoktritve. So the Purusha is trying to enjoy, correct? The Purusha, he has come into the material world for what? To try to be the Purusha. That means he's trying to be the enjoyer. That's why he's called as Bhoktritve. His only purpose of coming to the material world is to somehow try and enjoy this material world. And as he's trying to enjoy the material world, what does he get? Sukha Dukkhanam. So who's the cause of the sukha and dukkha? The cause of sukha and dukkha is the jiva himself. So because the jiva desired to enjoy independent of the Lord, that is called as bhoktritva. He tried to enjoy. And the moment he tries to enjoy independent of the Lord, Prakriti gives him a certain body to fulfill that desire to enjoy. And then he is given that particular body. And in that particular body, he gets some so-called happiness and suffering. As Prabhupada says, material world is no happiness, it's only suffering. But anyways, some imagined happiness. But whatever that happiness and distress is, the cause of that is the jiva himself. Prakriti is simply instrument, that's all. So, therefore, the important point is that the jiva is responsible for his own suffering and happiness in this world. Nobody else is responsible. As far as Prakriti is concerned, Prakriti is only an instrument for the cause and effects. That is the body that he gets, the effects of that body, that yes, that Prakriti is doing. But the cause for that, the root cause, is the enjoying mentality of the jiva, which results in the suffering and the happiness. And as Prabhupada is saying, that he cannot change. Once he's given a particular body because of his past desires, then whatever sukha and dukkha he is destined to get in that body, that is fixed. That he cannot change. Why? Because he is conditioned by the modes in certain way. So Prabhupada very often gives the example of the hog, as is giving this purport also. So the hog is eating stool, and he is thinking that he is very happy. By the covering of Maya, illusion, the hog is thinking he is happy, he is enjoying. Why? So first of all, why is put into that body? Because in the previous life, he desired to eat anything and everything. So because of that desire, now he is given the instrument for that. Okay, you want to eat anything and everything. Okay, take the body of hog. You eat anything and everything up to stool. No problem. But now what does Maya do? And so Maya has the two potencies, Avarnatmika Shakti and Prakshipatmika Shakti. So by these Shaktis, she covers the consciousness of the living entity. Or we could also say that basically the Bhagavatam explains that basically the modes act through the mind. And so in any case, because of the covering of Maya, the hog is imagining that he is eating stool and he is happy. Now this is the influence of the modes. So the tamogun, by the influence of tamogun, he is eating stool and is thinking he's happy. Now, a human being who's seeing that, what does he think? Does he think he's enjoying? No. The human being who's seeing that, he thinks, oh, what an abominable condition. What a suffering condition. Why? Because his consciousness is more developed. But the hog is not thinking like that. So similarly, even in the human form, people are eating all nasty things and they're thinking they're enjoying. And so Prabhupada says in one lecture, he was going by plane and the man sitting beside him is eating hog's intestines. And he's enjoying. Just see, so abominable, the hog is eating stool and this man is eating hog's intestines. And he's thinking he's enjoying. So, because he has been covered over by the modes, he thinks he's enjoying. But somebody who is in a higher mode, like Satugun, he thinks, oh, what abominable thing this man is eating. But the man doesn't realize. Why? Because he has been covered over. Why he has been covered over? Because that is what he has desired. And so then the next thing what happens? So he's eating all nasty things, and he's thinking he's enjoying. But the next thing what happens? He gets disease because of eating all the nasty things. Now can he say, no, I'll eat all the nasty things, I don't want the disease? He can say, but he's forced. He's forced to suffer. So, sukha dukkhana, he is forced to get the so-called happiness, and is forced to suffer the results. All this is forced upon the jiva. But the root cause is not Prakriti. Prakriti is just the instrument. The root cause is because the jiva, bhoktritve, he desire to enjoy. And then he simply gets the results. So therefore, this is very nicely explained by Srila Prabhupada in a lecture on the verse. So therefore, we will read this lecture. I put quite a long part of the lecture, but this basically sums up the whole thing. What Krishna is trying to speak here about Prakriti, Purusha and their union, which is explained in 20, 21, 22. These are the most important verses. And Srila Prabhupada in this lecture beautifully sums up the whole thing in very simple language with examples. Okay, so maybe some two or three devotees can take turns to read this excerpt from Srila Prabhupada's lecture. Okay, somebody begin reading, please.
Siddharth.
Just like one criminal is punished by the magistrate, that this man should undergo 6 months of imprisonment. So the judge or the magistrate superficially is the cause of his punishment. But actually he is not. He is giving him punishment according to the law. I have created such a situation. I have made myself criminal, and the magistrate, according to the law, giving me punishment. So actually, directly the magistrate is not the cause of my suffering. Why he should be the cause? He is not your enemy. This is going on.
Okay, so simple example Prabhupada is giving here. So just like the magistrate. So the magistrate is giving punishment. Why is giving punishment? That is a law. But why is he punishing? He is punishing because the person became a criminal. That is his choice. And then according to law, the magistrate is giving punishment. So you can't hold the magistrate responsible. So similarly, Prakriti is like the magistrate. Or as Prabhupada would very often say, that Maya is like the police department. So same thing, police department. So why the police takes action? Because somebody wants to become a criminal. That is his choice. And then the police captures him and punishes him. So same thing. So nothing very difficult to understand. Okay, go on, please.
Deepak.
So, bhoktratva, my enjoyment, because we have come to this material world for enjoyment. So everyone's enjoyment is not on the same standard. We can see that. Somebody is enjoying some way, another is enjoying one man's food, another man's poison. What is enjoyed by the hog is not enjoyed by other animal. This is going on.
Go ahead.
Therefore, when we get real consciousness by good association, if we can understand that I am under the clutches of Maya, Prakriti, and I am dictated according to my association with the quality of the nature, and I am getting different types of bodies, different types of situation for my distress or happiness.
Yes. Okay, someone else can continue.
Saurabh Prabhu.
This is my position, fully under the control of the Prakriti. It cannot be changed. Devi hi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Bhagavad Gita 7.14. Not possible. Devi hi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. You cannot change. But you can change by one process. What is that? Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Bhagavad Gita 7.14. If you surrender to Krishna, then you can get out of this control of Maya. Otherwise, it is not possible. Mam eva ye prapadyante mam mayam etam tarantite. Then what should be our decision? That better not to try for improving our material condition of life. That cannot be changed. It is not possible. According to destiny, we have to enjoy or suffer. This is called adrishta. Therefore, the Shastra gives you choice, gives you advice.
तस्यैव हेतु प्रयते तकोविदो न लभ्यते यत् प्रमतामुपरि यदा तल्लभ्यते दुःखवत् अन्यत सुखं कालेन सर्वत्र गभीररमसा. Okay, so this is from the first canto, Narad Muni's teachings to Vyasadeva. Okay, continue please, somebody else.
Hemnathan Prabhu.
Shastra says don't uselessly try to improve your position. The modern economists, they will say, no, we are not going to accept this. But it is a fact. People are trying to improve the condition of the poor man, but it is going on. But there are thousands, millions of poor men. 50 years ago, when I first came to Bombay, at that time, I was Grahastha. I saw there were persons lying down care of footpath. And 50 years after, we are seeing the same thing is going on, no change. There is a class of man who must lie down care of footpath. There are so many institutions, Dharidra Narayana Seva, but why there are Daridras still? That means you cannot change. It is not possible. It is not possible. Just like a man who has done something criminal and he is in prison, can you take him out? It will be another criminal action. If you try to take him away from the prison house by some means, then you will be punished and he will be punished. Both. This is the law of state. Similarly, how you can surpass the stringent laws of nature and the law of God? That is not possible. That is Vedic civilization. They were not very much anxious to improve material position. Even at the present moment, you go to that village, the innocent villagers, they are satisfied with the position Krishna has given, but they are anxious to improve their spiritual life. That is still you will find. Of course, it is not that you will not try to earn your livelihood, that you must, but you should not endeavor or give more time for your so-called material improvement. Better save time and utilize that time for improving your Krishna consciousness. That is perfection. That is the injection of the Shastras.
Okay, so Prabhupada is very clearly explaining here that how the material situation is fixed. So because of our own desires, we're given a certain body, and in that body, what is going to be our sukha and dukkha, our happiness and distress, that is destined, that is fixed. So therefore, there is no point in trying to improve the material situation. So Prabhupada has given the example of the people on the footpath. So Prabhupada also gives in other lectures, he gives the example of the hippies. So the hippies in the US, of course, Prabhupada, first of all, he says that I thought only in India, people are lying on the footpath. In America, there's no such thing. But he says, when I came to your country, Prabhupada is speaking in America, he says, when I came to your country, I'm seeing there are so many people are lying on the footpath, in the park, on the benches, so many people. Now why? That is their destiny, that is their karma, nobody can change it. And then he says, talking about the hippies, he says that many of them are actually coming from well-to-do families. But why they're lying on the street? That is their destiny. Even though they're born in rich families, by their destiny, they're forced to lie down on the street. Can't change. Can't change. So these laws of nature, very stringent, very stringent. So therefore, as Prabhupada again gives the simple example, that everyone is working hard to become Tata and Birla. Why everyone does not become? So the man on the footpath is also working. Day and night he's working. But he still continues on the footpath. That is the destiny. So So as Prabhupada is saying, so many institutions, there is Narayan Seva, so many people doing social welfare activities. But we find the position of the people still remains the same. So Prabhupada also says that just like sometimes the government builds houses for these poor people. And what do? They will sell off the house or give it on rent and they continue to stay on the footpath. Why? Destiny, that's all. So that's how material nature forces everyone to act according to their own desires and suffer the happiness and distress. It is practically impossible to change that condition. That's how one is bound by the three modes. So one is given a certain type of body, and of course, as far as animals are concerned, they're just like programmed. Okay, and then once they descend to the animal species, then gradual evolution takes place in the animal species. And then finally one comes to human form. Now even in human form, based upon the previous karma in the previous human life, then again one is influenced by the modes, one has to undergo his quota of suffering and enjoyment. And then in this human life, he has a choice. He has a choice. But again, his choices are also governed by the three modes. And then again he makes certain choices. Then on the basis of that, again he gets next body. So this has been going on since time immemorial. And practically, it is impossible to get out of that cycle. Practically impossible. It goes on like a chain reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction. So the jiva, he does an action, and so the action that he performs is also by the influence of Prakriti. By the influence of the modes, he performs an action. As soon as he performs an action, Prakriti gives him reaction. In this way, action-reaction chain has been going on since time immemorial. This has been going on. That is material life. So, now by the influence of Maya, the jiva is put into such an illusion to think that, oh, now I'm independent and I'm enjoying as I want. That is a big illusion. Again, the same example, just like the hog. The hog is thinking, look, I'm so independent. I can eat stool as much as I want. I can have sex as much as I want. I'm enjoying. Oh, he's not enjoying. He's simply acting according to the influence of the modes. He's forced to act like that. He's forced to eat stool. He has no choice. And yet he's thinking he's enjoying. That is the Avarnatmika Shakti of mind. He's put into that illusion. And same thing applies to humans also. So the human is eating hog's intestines and he's thinking, I'm enjoying. Is he enjoying? He's forced to eat like that. Because of his previous karma, because of his previous activities, he's put under tamogun and he's eating that and he thinks he's enjoying. So this is all the influence of the modes. And then, as we described, so he eats the nonsense, that's his action. And then he gets a reaction in the form of disease. And so this is what keeps on happening. Action, reaction. And then, and then he develops certain desires in this human life. And based upon the desires, he gets the next body. So this is what has been happening. Now, so therefore, in the next verse, of course, in one sense, we covered the next verse also, but still, the next verse is very important. In fact, the next verse is said to be the Mahavakya of the last 6 chapters. the Mahavakya of the last 6 chapters. Why? Because from this verse stems the entire last 6 chapters. All the last 6 chapters are essentially based on this verse. That is the next verse we'll recite. So the 22nd verse says, Purusha prakriti stohi bhumte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. Okay, somebody please read the translation purport. Hare Krishna.
Please can raise. Yes, Sachidev got to please read.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go.
The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the 2nd chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the entity is born sometime as a demigod, sometime as a man, sometime as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a gentleman, or as a bug. This is going on, and in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the 3 material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception. That change can be affected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the signs of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life.
Right. So here, so Krishna is saying, Purusha Prakriti Stohi Bhumte Prakriti Jan Guna. And so same thing. In the previous verse also Krishna said Bhoktritve. Here also is saying Bhumte. So the Purusha, he's trying to enjoy. So as Prabhupada explains in his lectures, so Purusha means enjoyer. So in this material world, Purusha means male. So the male thinks he's enjoyed, the female is supposed to be the enjoyed. But in this world, everyone is trying to be the Purusha, everyone is trying to be the enjoyer. Whether it is male body, female body, or whichever body, everyone is trying to be Purusha, everyone is trying to be enjoyed. That is why they're here in the material world. They're trying to dominate material nature, as Prabhupada writes. Bhumte Prakriti Jan Guna. So because of that desire to dominate, because of the desire to enjoy, what is the result? Karanam Guna Sangasya. They're influenced by the gunas. They're influenced by the 3 modes. And because of the 3 modes, Sad Asad Yoni Janmasu. They are given different types of bodies. Sad Yoni means higher bodies, like Devatas and higher planets, bodies in high planetary systems. And Asad Yoni means those in the lower species of life. So this entire cycle of going into different species of life is going on basically because the Jiva is trying to be the Purusha even though he is not the Purusha. So because he's trying to be the Purusha, independent of the Supreme Lord, therefore he has to go through all these bodies and get the Sukha and Dukkha he has to experience. So therefore Prabhupada is writing here that under the influence of material desire, or before that he writes, due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. That is the basic cause. And then he writes this important point, and in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. So he's imagining I am the master. So just like Prabhupada explains that just like somebody is smoking, somebody is drinking, thinking, look, I'm independent, I'm the master. I can smoke, I can drink, I can do whatever I want. But actually he's not master. He's simply being a slave, a servant of his senses. And we know what happens to the person. As he smokes and drinks more, gradually he becomes addicted. And then even if he wants to give up the habit, he cannot give up. That means what? Is he master or slave? He has become a slave of the habit. He's become a slave of the senses. And he imagines himself to be the master. That is the big illusion. So this is what is happening in the material world. In the material world, one is in a dreamlike situation. So Prabhupada explains in his lectures. So there's the night dream. So in the night, so one is dreaming, I'm the king, I'm this and that. And he's experiencing some enjoyment there. Even at night, the person, he actually takes it very seriously. So the Jiva at night, the subtle body, basically, the subtle body. So the subtle body is going into another body. He's imagining that he's in another body. And he so much misidentifies with that body that he takes it very seriously. So much so that the influence of the subtle body is so strong that the gross body actually manifests, changes as a result of the influence of the subtle body, even in dreams. So we all have experience, and Prabhupada's famous example. So there's the person is dreaming that the tiger is chasing him. And he's crying out, save me, oh, tiger is behind me. He's shouting. And not only shouting, he's sweating. And if the person is put to clinical tests, then we'll find all the symptoms of anxiety and tension. So we'll find his pulse rate is more, his heart rate is more. We'll find all that. We'll find all those symptoms. Due to what? Due to a dream-like situation. But he has taken the dream very seriously. So the same thing happens even in the daydream. The same thing happens in this body also. So one takes this situation, one so much misidentifies with the body, thinking I am this body, that one takes everything what is happening in this body very seriously. And then undergoes the suffering and happiness because of the misidentification with the body. It's not very difficult to understand. Another example can be given of in the movie So we all have experience of watching Bollywood movies, Hollywood movies, and we see that now what is the movie? The movie is absolute illusion, right? So therefore the movie is in a dark place, first of all. And the person has to first of all go in darkness, ignorance. And then there are the lights on the screen. Now by the influence of the lights, there are some people, they're moving, they're doing something. Somebody is murdering someone. Now the person who's watching, as he's watching, we all have experience and we see others also. Somebody's actually crying, somebody's actually laughing. Seeing that what's happening on the screen, somebody's actually laughing and actually crying. There are tears in the eyes. But for what? For some illusion. But the person has so much misidentified himself with that illusion on the screen that he takes it so seriously. This is how the material nature covers the living entity and puts him into so much illusion, so much misidentifies with the body, with the situation. And thus, even though the jiva has nothing to do with the body, he's para. He has nothing to do with the body and material nature. He has nothing to do. But because of the misidentification and the illusion is put into, he so much misidentifies, and thus he undergoes suffering and happiness. Just like the person watching a movie has nothing to do with the movie, with the characters in the movie, but still because of the misidentification, he actually laughs and cries. Same thing is happening even with this body. This is how the material nature is working on the jiva. Why? What is the root cause? The root cause is bhoktritve, or here it said bhungte prakriti jan guna. Because he desired to enjoy, that is why all this happens. And it will continue on eternally. It has been going on eternally and will continue eternally. The only solution, as Prabhupada is saying here in this purport, and as we read in the lecture, the only way to change it is by the hearing process. The only way to change it is by the hearing process. So if you surrender to Krishna, then you can get out of this control of Maya. So the only way, as Prabhupada says here, is by when one submits to the hearing process. The living entity, this is a very important statement. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spirituality. That is the crux of the matter. That is the crux of the solution. What is that? He has to submit to the hearing process. See the precise usage of words that Prabhupada is giving. Submits to the hearing process. Prabhupada didn't say just hearing. Submits to the hearing process. That means one has to hear submissively, and hearing submissively means one tries to apply what one has heard. Unless one does that, no change is going to take place. So we find there are so many people who hear, in India especially, so many Bhagavad Saptas and this katha, that katha, so many things go on. People go and listen ritualistically, very regularly, sincerely. They hear for 7 days, but after that, there is no practice. Therefore, there's no change in their life. They continue the same life. Therefore, one has to submit to the hearing process, means with a submissive attitude that this hearing is so important. This is what is going to change my life. So with that proper attitude, when one hears and tries to bring about a change in one's life, then it is possible to give up the long cherished desire to dominate material nature. So basically, as Prabhupada is saying here, Mamevai prapadyante Maya. So then by hearing, one understands that the only way to get out of this complicated mess, it's very complicated. Therefore, later on, Krishna gives the example of the banyan tree. So it's very complicated. In the Bhagavatam purports, in the Bhagavatam, you can see in the 4th canto, the 29th chapter, Narad Muni is in detail explaining. So after this Puranjan Upakyan, he is unraveling the analogy, the allegory, and he's beautifully explaining, especially this influence of the mind, which is influenced by the 3 modes. So we don't have time to discuss that in detail, but you can read it. And Prabhupada is giving purports there, and he explains how, by the influence of the mind, the influence of the 3 modes, the mind is creating so many desires. And Prabhupada explains that all these desires are stored in the minds in chronological order. And for each of those desires, he gets a different body in chronological order. That is what has been happening since time immemorial. Based upon desires, new bodies are created. And so therefore, the only way to get out of it is to submit to the hearing process and give up this desire to dominate material nature, to enjoy independent of the Supreme Lord. And gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spirituality. So to the degree one submits to the hearing process, brings about a change in life, and gives up the mentality to dominate, enjoy independent of the Lord, become servant of the Lord, surrender to the Lord, then one can experience the spiritual happiness. So this is the relation between the Purusha as a Jiva and Prakriti, and what is the relation between them that is being explained by Krishna in these verses. Okay, fine. So maybe we can take some questions at this point.
Yes, Prabhuji, there are already a lot of questions that the devotees were posting. So
Okay,
first one is by Sachijivan Gaur Prabhu at 7:16 a.m. Prabhuji.
Okay, what's that?
Living entity come to this world due to rebellious nature, and Prakriti is like a jail. Therefore, when
all souls go back to Godhead, then what is the need of Prakriti? And everything comes from the Lord. Then what is need to mention Prakriti and Jiva is eternal? Okay, so when all souls go back to Godhead, that is what never happens. That's what Prabhupada is writing. They don't go back to Godhead. They simply, at the time of total annihilation, at the time of, at the end of Brahma's life, the jivas are put to rest in the body of Mahavishnu. For some time, of course, from Mahavishnu's viewpoint, it is just one inhalation, exhalation. But anyways, whatever that relative time is, after that, the jiva is once again given body according to his previous desires. When the next kalpa begins, then once again is given body. So that is so all the souls don't go back to Godhead. And even if you hypothetically assume that, so once Prabhupada was asked that question, what if everyone takes to Krishna consciousness, everyone goes back to the spiritual world, then this world will be empty or what? Prabhupada said, don't worry, there'll always be some fools to occupy this world.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhuji, the point I'm trying to make here is the Bhagavan comes here to take back the forgotten souls, right? So even though what I'm not saying that in one lifetime of Brahma all the souls will go back, but at certain point of time when some souls, some percentage will go back in one lifetime Brahma, some percentage.
Okay, some will go back, but some may go back, but there are also Now, what is the count of the jivas? Unlimited jivas. Unlimited. There is no count of the number of jivas. So few may go back, but still there will be so many remaining.
Understood, Prabhuji. That point, understand. What I'm trying to make point here is there is some temporary manifestation created to keep the jivas intact, right? Here in this, and then when the jivas are okay, they understand that is our eternal position to serve the Lord, and they submissively submit to that, and then the count definitely should reduce, right, over the period of time.
What count are you talking about?
The number of jivas that comes from this.
No, what is that count? You have a count? What is that count?
No, it is not. The number is pretty. It's definitely is
there is no count. This is unlimited. Unlimited number. So what count are you talking about? So, anyways, go ahead. So
no. So you're saying that okay, even though there are people goes back, then some people will be still coming from the spiritual world.
Yes, that also could happen. That also could happen. But please note, the number going back is usually very, very small. Manushanam Sahasreshu. That itself is very rare, first of all. And there are countless jivas in this material world. So you are having a very limited conception of the number of jivas. You're talking about numbers, 10,000, 20,000. You're talking about, you're trying to understand something which is beyond our conception with a very limited conception. So please understand the first point is to understand that the unlimited jivas and the jivas actually perfecting their lives and going back to the spiritual world is very rare. Okay.
Okay, Prabhuji.
There are 9 more questions, Prabhuji, after this. Next one is at 7:25 a.m. Vikas Rana, Prabhuji. Just after this one.
Yes. So, one who reaches my abode never comes back. Even the devotees are endeavoring to attain the abode of the Lord, but there will still chance to fall down. Okay, so Krishna has given the assurance. Once one goes back, one will never come back. So one time it happened. Somehow it happened one time. But now Krishna is giving assurance. So many places. Yad gatvan anivartante tadhama paramam. So Krishna is giving enough assurances in the Gita that once one returns back, one will not come back. So one has assurance and one has faith in Krishna's words. All right.
Yes, Prabhuji. He says okay. Next one is right after that. By Anand Prabhu at 7:28 a.m.
Jivatma Nitya Baddha. So when they go back to Godhead, what would be their status? What status are you talking about?
I'm unmuting him.
Yeah, Prabhu, what I mean is like, would they still continue to be Nitya Baddha once they go to Godhead?
If they're Baddha, how they can go back?
Yeah,
they
so
have to come out of their conditioned state, isn't it? They have to come to the liberated platform. They have to become purified, free from the influence of the modes. Then only they can go back. How can they still go back in their Baddha condition? They have to become liberated. Then only they can go back. No?
Correct. So that's exactly my question, that why would anybody call why would you brand all Jivatmas as Nitya Baddha? Meaning, the word
in the material worlds, all jivas in the material worlds are called Nitya Baddha because they have been in the material world since time immemorial. All right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, should we go to the next one?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, is Jiva a soul responsible for happiness or distress? Yes, he is only responsible. No one else is responsible. Can soul being part and parcel of Lord be conditioned? Yes, he is conditioned. That's why we are calling Nitya Baddha. Is it because of subtle body, happiness and distress comes, or because of the soul? It is because of the subtle body. The subtle body is basically influenced. So, and the soul basically, because of the ahankar, false ego, misidentifies with the gross and subtle body. Prabhupada again gives a simple example. So the person is sitting in his Mercedes car, and he is so one in India we can see that very often. So there is some telawala, he comes on the way, and the man in the car, he immediately calls out, "Hey, tela!" So what's the problem? The problem is he's thinking that man driving the tela is a tela, and he's thinking he's sitting in the car, he's the car. So that's how there is misidentification. And so as soon as something happens to the car, the person gets so upset as if something has happened to him only. Why? Because he thinks he's the car. So similarly, because the soul misidentifies with the body, that is ahankar. And because of the misidentification with the body, and then the gross and the subtle body, and so therefore the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, so then they are influenced by whatever is happening to the gross body. And that's how the happiness and distress are felt, because of the misidentification. The soul has nothing to do with the whole thing, but because the soul misidentifies with the gross and subtle body, therefore he feels the happiness and distress. And the happiness and distress are of course experienced in the mind.
So Prabhuji, how to understand is that everything which emanates from Krishna, even Krishna's flute, Krishna's morpang, everything is transcendental. And if so part and parcel of Lord Krishna, then it can be conditioned because it's coming from Krishna.
Yes, coming from Krishna, but now he's in the material world, no? So because he's in the material world, now he has become covered. As soon as he comes into the material world, he's covered by the three modes. First of all, he's covered by the ahankar. The ahankar makes him misidentify himself with the body. That is the first thing that happens. And then everything else happens. So because of that covering, then that is why he misidentifies with the body, both gross and subtle. And why he's covered? Because he wanted to enjoy. If he's not covered, he cannot enjoy this world. Simple example. So just like if I'm walking on the road and I'm feeling hungry, and I see that there is a nice house, a beautiful garden with so many fruit trees, and I think maybe I should go and eat. Now, when will I be able to do that? Only if I'm convinced that there is no owner there. Then I will very coolly, I will go inside the garden, eat whatever I want. But if I know if there is an owner, can I do it? No, I can't. So similarly, I'm trying to enjoy somebody else's property. This material world is not mine, it is Krishna's. So I'm trying to enjoy somebody else's property. Now, how can I enjoy? Only if I'm covered to think that it is my property. So that is what Maya does, that is what Brahmaji does to the living entity. And so because of the covering, then the Jiva thinks of trying to enjoy this world. That's what. Is it okay? Next.
Next is Prabhuji.
Okay, this Purusha means enjoy. Jiva is suffering in this material world, but Lord addressed Jiva as Purusha. Yes, we already discussed that. Why is addressed as Purusha? Because he's trying to be Purusha. He's not the Purusha, but he's trying to be Purusha. Therefore, he is addressed as Purusha. Simple. Okay. Okay, Harisha Tripura is asking, living entities having desire to enjoy and Prakriti executes, correct? So it should be Jiva is the cause and Prakriti is the effect. Why Prakriti is mentioned as both the cause and the effect. Yes, Prakriti is the cause and effects of the material bodies. That is the meaning of Karya, Karana, Kartatve. So the Karya and the Karana, cause and effect. So the cause of the material body, the cause of the material body is Prakriti. Who's giving the material body? Prakriti is giving the material body. And the effects, as we're giving an example, the dog has to bark, the hog has to eat stew, those are the effects. They can't study philosophy. So those are the effects of the body. So this is all being done by Prakriti. So Prakriti is giving the body and the effects of the body, that is all being done by Prakriti. But within that body, the happiness and distress that the jiva undergoes, that is, the cause of that is the jiva. That is the point. So the material body, that is being given by Prakriti. So the Prakriti is the instrument for that. But within that body, whatever happiness and suffering the jiva undergoes, the cause of that is the jiva himself.
Prabhuji, can we say it like this? The jiva desired, and then that is the first cause, and then after that, the jiva is offered punishment. So as it is mentioned here, like judge, I think you showed that. So judge he becomes the second cause of giving the punishment, and then it has been executed.
Correct. Yes.
So now, just when you were explaining, I just got a crazy doubt. So we say Lord as Sarva Karana Karanam. So we see also the cause of living entities' desire to go away.
Yes, but then that's a simple point which we discussed many times. Even Krishna doesn't interfere with the free will of the jiva, isn't it? So ultimately, the jiva's prerogative is to desire. And so because of that desire, then everything begins because of that. And then Krishna is not forcing the desire. That is the jiva's prerogative.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay. Anything more?
Yes, Prabhuji. There are, I think, 6-7 more questions. Next is...
Okay, we will see how many we can take. Maybe we can go to few more minutes. Even after getting human birth, most of them do not get an opportunity to come in contact with devotees, so they do not get even a chance to choose. So how do we understand this? Okay, we will discuss this in Nectar of Devotion classes. Why some people get association of devotees, some don't. That we'll discuss in Nectar of Devotion classes. Okay, Krishna Karunam. Desire is a function of soul, mind's function is likes and desires, intelligence function is discriminate. Is it possible to interchange the functions? Mind can desire. Yes, mind is desiring. So what are likes and dislikes? Likes and dislikes are desires, no? What are likes and dislikes? That means I desire something, I don't desire something. That is likes and dislikes. What else? All right. Okay, Jiva is enjoying his hog because of past karma. He does not remember his past karma. Why he should not carry memory of past as warning so that he will learn from it and not try to commit it. Then he can never enjoy only. if he has if actually Prabhupada tells in one lecture, Prabhupada is telling, if the hog knows that this is stew, this is abominable, how can he eat it and enjoy? So he has to be covered. Then only he can try and enjoy. Otherwise, how he can enjoy? So therefore, the Lord covers him, makes him forget. That is also Lord's mercy. So this jiva has the desire to eat anything and everything. Now that desire has to be fulfilled. So if that desire has to be fulfilled, then he has to forget that this is stool. So he forgets, and then he thinks he's enjoying. That was his desire. His desire is being fulfilled. That's Lord's mercy. Okay. What is this Srimad Bhagavatam verse number? What is this?
I think, Prabhuji, probably that was the fourth canto that you were referring to, right? I think might be
Oh,
that.
that is 29th chapter. Towards the end of the 29th chapter, that whole description is there. Maybe verses from 50 onwards, 50, 55. That whole section is there. Okay, it says that everything in the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. No new thing in the material world, correct? Then how can we get desire mastering mentality? Now that we already explained. That we already explained. Somehow it happened once. That's it. Prabhupada is writing that. Somehow it happened. How it happened, you ask Krishna afterwards. Okay, Sundar Damodar Prabhu, what is that little enjoyment a jiva feels? How can we understand in context? In the material world, there is no happiness. So yes, so the happiness is an illusion. It is not real enjoyment. So it's only an illusion. So just like as we gave the example, the man is eating hog's intestines and he's thinking he's happy. Why he's thinking he's happy? Because he's influenced by tamogun. That's what Prabhupada is writing. One man's, in the lecture we saw that. One man's food is another man's poison. So later on in the Bhagavad Gita, we will discuss food in the mode of goodness, food in the mode of passion, food in the mode of ignorance. So the man, because he's covered by tamogun, he's able to enjoy the hog's intestines. Somebody in sattvagun, he thinks, oh, so abominable. So we all have experience, right, as devotees. So now can we even think of eating something like that? No. Why? Because the influence of the modes is different now. But because he's influenced by the tamogun, he thinks he's enjoying. But is he actually enjoying? The tamogun is making him feel that he's enjoying. So his enjoyment is simply under illusion. Actually, there's no enjoyment. Actually, there's no enjoyment. But under illusion, he's thinking I'm enjoying. But that's his illusion. And so therefore, you read third chapter of the Gita. I suppose this is which one? Okay, this verse which is talking about the qualities of lust. I'll just tell you in a second. So yes, third chapter, verse number 39. Prabhupada writes towards the end of that purport. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoy. So it is a so-called feeling of happiness, but because there is a so-called feeling of happiness, why that is the ultimate enemy? Because the person becomes conditioned to that so-called happiness. And that's how he continues his material existence, trying to enjoy that same happiness again and again, though it is chewing the chewed. But he's still trying to enjoy. He thinks there is some other rasa he's going to get, but no, it's the same old thing. But because of the ignorance that Maya is covering him with, he thinks that there is some enjoyment. So it's just like the hog eating stool. He thinks it's enjoyment, but for a human being, abominable. But because he's conditioned to think like that, by the influence of the modes. Therefore, he feels that so-called enjoyment. All right?
Yes, Prabhuji, says okay.
Okay, then what?
We have, I think, 3 more questions, Prabhuji. Next
okay, but devotee is also there in material world, even though we say that he's liberated. Yes, so when he's liberated, then he's not Nitya-Baddha. As long as he's influenced by the modes, then he's Baddha. The moment he becomes free from the influence of mode, then he's not there. Then we don't say Nitya Baddha, then we say Nitya Mukta or Jivan Mukta. Even in this life, one could be on the liberated platform, then it's called Jivan Mukta. Okay, does in liberated state soul get rid of both the gross and subtle body, and there's only one soul? Of course, in the liberated state, as long as one is in the material world, one will have the body, gross and subtle body. As long as one is material world, one will have the gross and subtle body. But still, it will be spiritualized. Prabhupada says that. It will be spiritualized. So that means he won't be influenced by the 3 modes. So the example Prabhupada gives is like the iron rod. Iron rod put in fire. So it's still iron rod, but it acts like fire. So similarly, still is gross and subtle body, but when it becomes totally purified, then it is spiritualized. It appears as if it's gross and subtle body, but it is spiritualized. It's just like the iron rod put in fire. So it functions on the totally spiritual platform. So both the gross and subtle body 100% are used in Krishna's service. That's the meaning of being spiritualized. So there's no influence of the modes, there are no material desires. So that is the liberated state. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji, says okay.
Spiritual world is transcendental and not mine, not present. And why? Okay, we already discussed that. How can mind desire? Because mind doesn't have consciousness. Well, that is what the soul is doing. Because the soul is present, therefore mind can desire. The soul is energizing everything. The soul is giving the consciousness. That's it?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. Good. Okay, so now we proceed ahead. So this was a discussion about Jiva as the Purusha, or at least the so-called Purusha. So Prabhupada also gives the example. So just like a lady, she dresses like a man. Present day we see many times. Lady dresses like a man. But doesn't mean she becomes a man? No, she still remains a lady. So similarly, the same thing is happening in the material world. The Jiva is trying to be Purusha. But just because he imagines himself to be Purusha, he doesn't become Purusha. So the real Purusha is the Supreme Lord. And so therefore, now the next few verses are about the real Purusha. And that is the Supreme Lord. And that is what Krishna speaks in the next verse now. 23rd verse. Okay, fine. There's a commentary by Baldev Vidyabhushan here, but I don't think so there's a need for this because we discussed everything. Okay, fine. So we're going to the 23rd verse. Upadrashta Anumanta cha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara Paramatmeti Chapyukto Dehesmin Purusha Paraha. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter and who is known as the super soul. Okay, somebody can read this purport, please.
Yes, Sham Chaitanya Prabhuji.
Yeah. It is stated here that super soul, who is always with the individual soul, is the representation of the Supreme Lord. He is not an ordinary living entity, because the monist philosophers take the knower of the body to be one. They think that there is no difference between the super soul and the individual soul. To clarify this, Lord says, he is represented as the Paramatma in every body. He is different from the individual soul. He is para, transcendental. The individual soul enjoys the activities of a particular field, but the super soul is present not as finite enjoyer, nor as one taking part in bodily activities, but as the witness, overseer, permitter, and supreme enjoyer. His name is Paramatma, not Atma, and he is transcendental. It is distinctly clear that the Atma and Paramatma are different. The super soul, the Paramatma, has legs and hands everywhere, but the individual soul does not. And because the Paramatma is Supreme Lord, he is present within to sanction the individual souls desiring material enjoyment. Without the sanction of the Supreme Soul, the individual soul cannot do anything. The individual is Bhukta, or the sustained, and the Lord is Bhokta, or the maintainer. There are innumerable living entities, and he is staying in them as a friend. The fact is that Every individual living entity is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and both of them are very intimately
related
as friends. But the living entity has the tendency to reject the uh, sanction of the Supreme Lord and act independently in an attempt to dominate nature. And because he has his tendency, he is called the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy, as long as he is conditioned by the material energy. The Supreme Lord, as his friend, the super soul, stays with him, just to get him to return to the spiritual energy. The Lord is always eager to take him back to the spiritual energy, but due to his minute independence, the individual entity is continually rejecting the association of the spiritual light. This misuse of independence is the cause of his material strife in the conditioned nature. The Lord, therefore, is always giving instruction from within and from without. From without, he gives instructions as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, and from within, he tries to convince the living entity that his activities in the material field are not conducive to
conducive.
Just give it up and turn your faith towards me, then you will be happy, he says. Thus, the intelligent person who places his faith in the Paramatma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, begins to advance towards a blissful eternal life of knowledge.
Okay, so again, a very beautiful purport of Srila Prabhupada. So, of course, the second paragraph is sort of summarizing that the same topic that he has been discussing in the previous purports as to why the living entity comes into the material energy, and how the Lord as the super soul is always trying to inspire the jiva to come back to him. Okay, so that's what he says. The super soul is always saying, just give it up and turn your faith towards me, then you will be happy. So here Krishna is explaining about the super soul and what are the functions of the super soul. What are the activities of the super soul? Basically, Upadrashta, overseer. So we know again the famous analogy, which you see in the photograph here, of, I suppose it's from the Mundaka Upanishad, of the two birds on the tree. So one bird is eating the bitter fruits, the sweet fruits, experiencing happiness and distress, and the other bird is simply watching, so overseeing. So that's what the Paramatma does, overseer, and at the same time, Anumanta, permitter. So unless the super soul gives permission, the jiva cannot do anything. So Prabhupada explains this in his lectures. So then somebody may ask the question, so why does the super soul give sanction for all the nonsensical activities of the jiva? So then Prabhupada explains that. So it's just like if there's a thief. So the thief, he wants to steal. So Krishna as the Paramatma, he tells, don't steal. And so everyone has the experience of conscience, and even the materialists accept the concept of conscience. So there seems to be an inner voice which is saying, don't do it. So yes, that's basically Paramatma which gives that inspiration. Don't do it. But then the thief insists, no, I want to steal. And Krishna says, okay, do it at your own risk. Because why does Krishna do that? He doesn't want to interfere with the free will of the living entity. And so therefore he allows. Because unless he sanctions, he can't do it. So he sanctions it because that's his desire. But then he has to face the consequences. So that's how he's Anumanta, he's Bharta, he's the real master. So Prabhupada, he gives example. He says that just like even in this world, sometimes the servant, he wants to become like the master. He wants to take the master's position. That competition is always happening in this world. So there's always a desire to be the master. And so that's what happens. The jiva is also trying to be the master. And so similarly, Bhokta, he's the supreme enjoyer, as Prabhupada is writing in the purport. The Lord is Bhokta and the jiva is Bhukta. He is the enjoyed. But then the jiva is also trying to be the bhokta. He's also trying to be the enjoyer, and that becomes the cause of his material existence. So now Krishna explains what is the result of understanding all this philosophy. What is the result of understanding? Krishna explains in the next verse. Ya evam vetti purusham prakritam cha gunai saha sarvatha vartamanopi na sa bhuyo abhijayate. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. Okay, so one who understands all this, of course, an understanding obviously means one has to apply. It's not just a theoretical understanding. So if one understands this philosophy and then applies the philosophy in one's life, then there's a good chance for liberation, getting out of this material worlds. Okay, please read this purport.
Rasmurti Guru. Rasmurti Guruji.
Okay, I will read. Clear understanding of material nature, the super soul, individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible and become liberated and turn to spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. This is the result of knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is to understand distinctly that the living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence by his personal endeavor in association with authorities, saintly persons, and a spiritual master. He has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness by understanding Bhagavad Gita as it is explained by the personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again into this material existence. He will be transferred into spiritual world for a blissful eternal life of knowledge.
Okay, so here again you see the precise use of words by Srila Prabhupada. First of all, here again Prabhupada is saying the living is by chance fallen into this material existence. By chance somehow it has happened. Okay. And then he says, by his personal endeavor in association with authorities, saintly persons, and a spiritual master, he has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness. So this endeavor the jiva has to make. Okay, so everyone is there to help. Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, everyone is there to help. But ultimately the jiva has to make that endeavor. Nobody else is going to make the endeavor for him. And so therefore Prabhupada often give the example of everyone has to fly his own plane. Ultimately every jiva has to put his own endeavor. Everyone else is there to help as long as the plane is on the ground. Once it takes off, then he's on his own. So similarly, each one's spiritual life, everyone has to practice on his own. Nobody else can practice for somebody else. Prabhupada writes in Nectar of Devotion, even the guru has to practice his own spiritual life. He cannot think that I will get some spiritual credits from my disciple's spiritual life or something like that. Everyone has to practice his own spiritual life. Everyone is on his own. And then it is his responsibility to do that and revert to spiritual consciousness. The ultimate goal is the consciousness has to change. The material consciousness has to change to spiritual consciousness. That is the ultimate goal. Revolution in consciousness. Change of consciousness. That has to take place. Otherwise, one may be doing so many things, but if the consciousness is not changing, what is the use? If the consciousness is not changing to spiritual or Krishna consciousness, one may say, oh, I'm chanting the holy names, I'm doing this service, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But if the consciousness is not changing, what is the use of all that? So each one has to see for oneself. Is my consciousness changing over a period of time? Am I still trying to be the enjoyer, controller, proprietor? Or am I trying to be the servant of the servant? What is my consciousness? This is what each one has to see and put the endeavor to make the change in consciousness. Then the liberation will take place. Then the going back to God, it will take place. Not that, okay, I have read the Bhagavad Gita, I've learned these verses, and so I'll get liberated. No. One has to put the endeavor to actually put things into practice and make a change in consciousness. Okay. So now the next question can be asked. So are there some other ways for attaining liberation? Now Krishna answers that. Jnanenatmani pashyanti kechit atmanam anye sankhena yogena karma yogena chapare. Some perceive the super soul within themselves through meditation, others through cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desires. So these are some other ways to attain liberation. Basically, these are the processes that Krishna has already described in the first 6 chapters of the Gita. And so here, as Prabhupada explained, so basically the 3 things Krishna is speaking about: Dhyanena, Sankhena, Yogena, and Karma Yogena. So these are the 3 processes that he's speaking about. And as Prabhupada has explained the purport, and the other acharyas also explained, that so Prabhupada says there are 2 classes as far as man's search for self-realization is concerned. One class is atheists, agnostics, skeptics. They are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding. Okay, they are out of the game. They have nothing to do with spiritual understanding. Now, but there are others who are faithful in their understanding of spiritual life, and they're called introspective devotees, philosophers, and workers who have renounced fruitive desires. So here, the dhyanena refers to devotees. Okay, devotees also meditate on the Supreme Lord. Okay, so here the dhyanena refers to devotees who meditate on the Supreme Lord. Of course, Prabhupada writes Super Soul, but then the Super Soul is an expansion of the Supreme Lord, so not a big difference. So the acharyas explain that here dhyanena refers to devotees who meditate on the Supreme Lord, and the others are the philosophers, Samkhya, so that is the Jnanis, and then the Karma Yogis. So these are all the different paths by which one can attain liberation. And of course, it's not referring to the Mayavadis. Prabhupada clarifies in the next sentence. Those who are always trying to establish the doctrine of monism are also counted among atheists and agnostics. In other words, only the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are best situated in spiritual understanding because they understand that beyond this material nature of the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of God is expanded as Paramatma's truth. Okay. And so then he explains how the Sankhya philosophers, they also analyze the material worlds. And when they're able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendent to the material elements, they're also able to understand that above the individual soul, the Supreme Personality of God. He's the 26th element. Okay, so 25th is the soul and the 26th is the super soul. Thus, gradually, they also come to the standard of devotional service. So that is Bhavanam Janmanamante, Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. So that is how they also progress. Okay, so these are other processes by which one can attain liberation. Now, if one is not able to practice any of these above processes, then what? So then he says in the 26th verse, Anye tvaevam najananta shrutva nebhya upasate tepi chati tarantyeva mrityum shruti parayana. Okay, somebody read this translation purport, please.
Yes, so that's over, Prabhuji.
Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Purport. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society because the modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave a great space to hearing because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress. Especially according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration of Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age, no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are knowledgeable of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization and follow his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended. He is the, and this is the very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from the authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to God, back to home.
Okay, fine. So I think so. It's a very clear purport. So if one is not able to practice all this karma yoga, jnana yoga, and all that, so one can simply begin by hearing. One can simply begin by hearing from the right sources, as Prabhupada says, from a realized soul. And then as one hears, then one gets some knowledge, then one surrenders to the appropriate authorities, and then one can gradually make progress. And then, of course, later on, take shelter of a pure devotee and all that. So that's how, if one simply begins by hearing from the right source, then also one can gradually progress towards liberation. So these are the ways by which one can ultimately realize the soul and the super soul and proceed on the path of liberation. Okay, fine. So this is the section from 20 to 26. Okay, this is Prabhupada's lecture. Please read.
Abhay Anantru. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji. Even for going to the privy, I wanted permission of my mother. Hanumanta means without his permission, or you cannot do anything. You cannot do anything because everything belongs to Krishna. How you can do something without permission? Now it's fine.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So Hanumanta and Updasta, just like father and son, little child, he wants to do something and want permission from the father or the mother, and he gives. In our childhood, I remember that even for going to the privy, I wanted permission of my mother. Can I go? Mother is not restricting me. Still, I'm asking the permission of mother. Can I go? Can I go? I remember this natural. Similarly, we cannot do anything without the permission of the super soul within the heart. Sarvasya chetam hade sannevishto.
Yes, continue please.
So when we do something wrong, how Krishna as Paramatma gives permission? This question may be raised, but he gives permission when I do something wrong because I cannot do anything without his permission. But he gives me permission as a Karnam Guna Sangosya. That is already explained. He can give you permission, but the enjoyment and suffering will have to be taken by you. You insist permission, I want to do this, and without permission you cannot do it. Therefore, Krishna gives you permission. All right, you do it, but at your risk. Krishna doesn't want that you should do it, but you want to do it, therefore he gives permission.
Okay, so we discussed these points already. That how Krishna, he has to give permission, then only it is possible for one to do something. Okay, fine. So then we have the last section of the chapter, which we will discuss tomorrow. And hopefully if we have time, then we will also try to start the 14th chapter tomorrow. we should do that, I suppose. So half the class we will finish this last section, which is a small section, almost like a revision of what has been discussed. So half the class will try to finish this, and another half will try to begin the 14th chapter, so that by Saturday we can finish the 14th chapter. That's our plan. That's okay. Fine. Should we take one or two questions, or should we close?
That's up to you, Prabhuji. We have 6 minutes remaining.
Okay, fine. We can take one or two
there are
questions.
7 questions which have come in so far.
Okay, let's see how many we can answer in 5 minutes.
So it's first one is at 8:31 a.m. Prabhuji by Shrikant Srinivas Prabhuji.
Where's
Is
that?
fear and anxiety due to mode of 8:31 a.m. by Shrikant Srinivas Prabhuji? Is fear and anxiety due to mode of ignorance?
Okay, regarding the modes, we are going to discuss in the next chapter. So that will select. Okay, next one. When Lord is not directly involved with living entity in the material world, but through Maya Devi, then how Lord as Super Soul is directly engaged to sanction individual soul's desire? Okay, so the Lord is sitting beside the beside the soul, so he understands the desire of the soul, and then he sanctions. But then he only sanctions. The work is all done through Maya Devi, so he's in that sense is not directly in touch with Maya Devi. He just gives the sanction, and then everything is done through Maya. Okay, we had discussed in our last discussions also, we had discussed this section from the 5th chapter, verses 13 to 16. Okay, we had discussed that section in our previous discussion once we had discussed. You can revise that section if you want to understand this more clearly. Okay, Arjun. Paramatma is always referred to as a friend. He is also sometimes called as Chaitaguru. Are these two relationships, friend and teacher, the only two types of relationship one may have with the Paramatma? Well, the relationship is told over here, Upadrashta, Anumanta. So these are the relationships. So he is overseer, he is sanctioner, he is bhokta, bharta, bhokta, he is maintainer, he is the enjoyer. So these are the relationships. Yes, and so as a maintainer, yes, he is maintainer, his friend. And yes, he's also the Chaitya Guru. He's all, as we just read, he's always giving inspiration to do the right thing. He accompanies the jiva with every body. Yeah, so these are all the relationships. I think it's not very difficult to understand. Association of spiritual lights. That's a proper special way of putting it. But basically it means association of spiritual aspects. Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Guru includes Chaitya Guru, Paramatma. Prabhupada's poetic way of putting that. Okay, different individuals, different levels of tolerance, intelligence, different attributes according to that one. Okay, this is all the influence of the modes. This is all the influence of the modes which we'll discuss in the next chapter. Oh, it's the same question again. By chance, how the living entity fell. This question keeps coming up again and again. Okay, and this is the last one, I suppose.
Yes, Prabhuji. After this,
okay, Mayavadis, do they go to Brahma? We already discussed that point. The Mayavadis are offenders, so they don't go to Brahma Jyoti, they go to hell. Okay, our desires, okay. Then in many cases we hear as well-wisher. Yes, so we already read Prabhupada's lecture. So he's well-wisher because he's always giving guidance. Don't do this, do this. But then we insist, even though the Lord is saying don't do, we insist, no, I want to do. So he's well-wisher. Therefore he gives guidance, but we don't listen. Whose problem? Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji, we don't have any more questions.
Okay, fine, very good. We're on time. So thank you all very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. So we continue tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.